Hey guys, today I'm gonna share with you a story about a recent health scare we had with our little buddy Marmaduke. Now, I wasn't sure at first if I really wanted to post this story, but then I realized that even though it's not a very fun topic, it is important to share this with you so that you could have a realistic idea of what owning a bearded dragon can be like. You always have to be prepared for unpredictable medical issues with any pet, and bearded dragons are no different. In case you're worried, I do want to let you know that he is perfectly fine now. He has recovered, but it was really scary for us for a few days, so I'm going to tell you what happened. So the day before he started showing any symptoms, he seemed totally normal. In fact, here are some cute pictures I snapped the day before of him basking in his tank and regulating his body temperature by venting heat. And we took him out to play in the garden like we do on most sunny days, and he seemed happy and active as usual. Then the next day, we noticed a sudden change in his behavior. It happened so quickly that I wasn't able to get any photos or video. But basically, he started being really defensive when we tried to handle him. He was actively recoiling from our touch, sort of scooting backwards and trying to get away. And he was puffing out his beard and opening his mouth to hiss at us with his whole body puffed out and rigid. Since I didn't get any pictures of Marmaduke doing this, I did find some examples online of what an angry or defensive bearded dragon looks like, and this is pretty much what he was doing. So we had never seen him behave like this before. He's usually very chill and easygoing. So this sudden and drastic change made us pretty concerned. And typically when a bearded dragon is upset, the best thing to do is just give them space and let them calm down. So we decided to just leave him in the terrarium for a while and see if having some space to himself would help him chill out from whatever is bothering him. We made sure that he had fresh food in his tank, but he wasn't interested in any of it. A few hours later, I went to check on him, and I also at this point started taking video in case I needed to show it to our veterinarian. By this time, he had started getting worse. I tried to pick him up for his regular bath, and he could hardly grab a hold of my hand. Normally, he just swings his back legs right up and has no trouble finding a stable position to hang on, but you can see here that he's starting to lose motor control of his legs. So I brought him over to the bathtub and was going to put him down, but he started shaking and twitching much worse. I tried to keep the camera as steady as possible here so that the tremors were clear on the video for our vet. So this shakiness you see is all from Marmaduke twitching. It's not from me shaking the camera. He was tremoring so badly, it was really hard for me watching him suffer like that. He kept scrambling and trying to climb up my arm to get more secure, but he just kept losing his grip. He seemed so frightened and wouldn't even let me put him down. He just kept trying to swing up his legs and hang on, but he couldn't control his legs very well. decided a bath would probably not be a good idea in this condition, so I put him back in his tank with some more food, but he was still refusing to eat anything. He couldn't see the food very well. His eyes were actually twitching back and forth, just like his limbs were, and it seemed like he really couldn't see anything more than a few inches from his face. So this all got me pretty worried, and I put in a call to our regular reptile vet, but the soonest they could fit us in was in 2 days. So I went ahead and scheduled that appointment, but his state seemed to be rapidly declining. I was worried that 2 days might be too long. I decided that we needed to take him to the emergency vet hospital right away. I called before leaving the house to make sure that they did have an exotic specialist vet on staff that night, which luckily they did. So we drove over there and stayed with him for the next 7 hours that it took for him to get evaluated and tested. They were super busy that night, but he was a trooper and he handled it pretty well. And the staff there kept his travel tub on a warm heat mat to keep him comfortable. The first thing the vet wanted to check was potential calcium deficiency that might be causing metabolic bone disease, or MBD. Now, this is a disease that can cause a weakening of the bone structure and can also cause a lot of the symptoms we were seeing, like the twitching and the loss of appetite. Now, we were kind of skeptical that this was the issue, since we do make sure to dust his meals with calcium and vitamin D and multivitamin powder every day, and we make sure that he gets the proper heating and lighting. But honestly, calcium deficiency would have been the easiest thing to fix, so we were happy to take the blood test and get that ruled out. And that blood test did reveal that his calcium was within normal range, so that was a relief. And while we were at the emergency vet, we also got some x-rays taken. Now, these show actually a really good bone density, especially in the tiny bones in his fingers and toes, which is where you'd start to see bone degradation first because those bones are so small. But the vet said that he was really pleased with the bone density shown in these x-rays, which is another confirmation that he did not in fact have a calcium deficiency. These x-rays also showed that he didn't have a bowel obstruction, like something caught in his intestines, or a lung infection, which were two other issues that I had been worried about. Here's another x-ray with a side view of his whole body. I actually really love these x-rays. I'm thinking about blowing them up poster size and mounting them on the wall. And they do show that we had eliminated the more commonplace medical issues that would have been easiest to fix, like calcium deficiency, a bowel obstruction, or a respiratory infection. Sadly, that left us to consider the more serious and complicated issues of potential infection with a parasite or a bacteria or a virus, or perhaps toxicity from eating something bad like a poisonous plant or insect. Or we could be seeing, the onset of a neurological or genetic disease that could be impacting his nervous system or his eyes and his vision, or, motor control of his muscles. There's lots of possibilities at this point for what could be wrong. But the vet did feel that he was pretty stable at that point, and his vitals were stable, so he probably wasn't going to get much worse. So he sent us home that night with instructions to just keep him as comfortable as possible until that regular vet visit that we had scheduled in 2 days. He also told us to see if we could just get him to eat anything the next day. It was really hard for me to sleep that night, honestly. I was so worried and distressed, and just hoping that he wouldn't get worse overnight or possibly die while we were all sleeping. It was a really rough night for me. So the next day, we tried to get him to eat something. It had been a few days of no food at this point, so he did express some interest in eating, but he seemed to still be having a really hard time even seeing the food. and getting it in his mouth. His eyes and his whole head were sort of twitching and shaking, and it took him several tries to get the food in his mouth, and it looked like he was struggling to chew and swallow. And of course, we were glad to see him eat anything at all, but the difficulties he had doing so didn't make us feel very optimistic. Following morning after that was our scheduled appointment with our regular reptile vet. She agreed that it was a relief to have eliminated calcium deficiency, bowel obstructions, and lung infections, and that we needed to proceed with more tests to figure out what was going on. She brought up the possibility of him having an adenovirus or ADV infection, which is known to cause tremors and shaking like the ones we were able to show her on the video we took. ADV is also known as wasting disease or stargazing disease because of the lack of eating, the weight loss, and neurological issues like twitching, seizures, and arching of the neck up to the sky due to damage on the nervous system. So I had considered the possibility that he had ADV, and I kind of dismissed the idea since the only place he could have gotten it from was another ADV-infected beardie, and he hasn't encountered any other beardies since we got him at 8 weeks old. And if he had gotten ADV from another beardie before that time, when he was just a baby, he would have likely shown symptoms a lot earlier and would have probably died by now, as ADV is extremely deadly for baby beardies. It was worth doing an ADV test anyway, just to eliminate this as a possibility and for our own peace of mind. For this test, they had to collect a blood sample and a cloacal swab, and these samples had to be shipped across the country to a research university that has a zoological infectious disease testing lab. It's a highly specialized test that you can't just get done at most vets, and it would be a long 3-week wait to get those results back. In the meantime, she also collected another blood sample to test for any other nutritional deficiency, such as protein or potassium. This blood sample was also measured for white blood cell counts, which are the immune cells that respond to an infection. They also examined his blood sample under a microscope for presence of blood parasites. We also provided the vet with a stool sample to check for any intestinal parasites. Now here is a comprehensive list of all the appointments and tests that were needed, along with their cost and results. Reptile veterinary care is not cheap. We spent almost $1,000 in less than a week doing all of these tests. And this, guys, is why you always want to keep an emergency fund when you have a pet, because you never know when you're going to need that money. So as you can see on this list, all of the tests came back normal except for this one here, which is for his liver enzymes, which were slightly elevated. So the liver is an organ that detoxifies the blood, and it produces more enzymes when it has to work harder to detoxify the bloodstream from a foreign contaminant. Given that basically everything else could be eliminated as a cause for his tremors, defensive behavior, and lack of eating, the elevated liver enzymes indicated that he was experiencing some kind of mild toxicity from eating something that he wasn't supposed to. This test result also explains why Marmaduke gradually recovered from his ailment across about 2 weeks' time. Because as his liver was able to clear the toxin, his physiology slowly returned to normal. And I am happy to report that he has now fully recovered and is back to his silly acrobatic ways. We didn't actually end up having to treat him at all. He just needed time for his body to clear out whatever was causing him toxicity, and then he got back to normal. So what does this whole situation mean for us and for Marmaduke? Well, it suggests that he ate something that did not agree well with his system. And what might that have been? Well, there's really no way of knowing at this point, but we assume that he ate a slightly toxic bug while he was out in the garden with us. We don't think it was from chemical toxins, as we keep an all-organic garden and yard, and to our knowledge, we don't have any poisonous plants in the yard like datura or lilies. We also know that it wasn't from anything we fed him directly. But he does like to be sneaky and chase insects in the yard when we turn our eyes away for a second. Sometimes he's so fast that we don't get to see what bug he caught, we just see him chomping down on it. So it's totally possible that he discovered some new tasty bug that ended up causing his liver some distress. Of course, this is not an ideal scenario. You don't want your pets eating things they're not supposed to, and the aftermath of him getting ill was really scary for all of us. But that's the risk you take if you ever let your pets go outside. Even dogs and cats can eat insects or plants that end up being toxic to them. And even if you never took your dog outside, for example, it could still break into your cupboards and eat your stash of chocolate. So even with the best husbandry and care, pets eating something they're not supposed to can't be avoided 100% of the time. You just have to do your best to monitor them and keep a close eye out for any behavior that seems unusual, and take your pet to the vet right away if you have any doubts about their health. The only way we really could have prevented something like this happening is to keep Marmaduke inside 24/7, but we think that would actually be really cruel for him, given how much he loves exploring outside and getting natural sunlight. It would kind of be a long and torturous punishment to never let him go outside again, just to make sure that he never eats something he's not supposed to. So, we will continue to let him play outside with us, but we will try harder not to let him eat any unknown insects. And who knows, maybe he's even learned his lesson and won't ever try eating that particular bug ever again.
I heard that. I heard it. I heard you doing a poo-poo.
Alright guys, that wraps up this video. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we have something a little bit more cheerful to tell you about next time. See you later!